In 2023, Major League Baseball changed the timing of every pitch in the sport. Pitchers who had spent 10 or 15 years building the same rhythm were suddenly told to work faster, 15 seconds with the bases empty, 20 seconds with runners on. If the ball was not on its way in time, it counted as a ball. No gradual rollout, no opt-out. The average game shrank by 24 minutes. Attendance climbed. Ratings went up for the first time since 2012. Broadcasters, advertisers, and league executives celebrated the faster pace almost immediately. By every number the league cared about, it worked. But buried inside that success story was a data pattern that almost no one talked about at the time. A specific group of pitchers, guys with long track records of excellence, fell off a cliff in 2023. Their ERAs rose. Their velocity dropped. Their fWAR numbers collapsed, and the one thing they had in common was not age, not injury, not declining stuff. It was tempo. They were slow, and the clock exposed them in a way that the celebration around shorter games completely obscured. The question no one was asking loudly enough was this: were these veterans actually getting worse, or was the clock actively dismantling something that had taken them a decade to build? If you want to understand what the data actually tells us about this, stay with this, because what comes next rewrites the conventional story. Before 2023, slow tempo was not a flaw. It was a tool. Pitchers like Shohei Ohtani, who was tracked as the slowest starting pitcher in the league during the 2022 season, used that deliberate pace as part of their competitive process. The extended time between pitches allowed them to read the hitter, communicate with the catcher, set their grip precisely, and control the mental rhythm of the at-bat. Baseball Savant's tempo tracker showed that in 2022, 110 pitchers averaged at least 20 seconds per pitch with the bases empty. That was not a bug in the system. Those were established professionals doing exactly what had worked throughout their careers. Some of them had been pitching that way for 10 or 15 years. The assumption heading into 2023 was simple. Everyone adjusts. Athletes are professionals. They adapt. If minor league systems ran a pitch clock for a full year without catastrophic results, surely the big league veterans could figure it out by April. The transition was expected to be minor, an inconvenience rather than a restructuring. Preseason commentary was largely optimistic. Players would grumble, the clock would tick, and within a few weeks the game would settle into its new rhythm. That assumption turned out to be completely wrong for a specific group of veteran pitchers. If you want baseball stories where the numbers actually explain what happened on the field, subscribe now. This channel is built for that. Pitchers forced to speed up by 5 seconds or more after the pitch clock arrived lost velocity at a massive rate. 85% saw their fastball velocity decline from 2022 to 2023. For pitchers who only made minor tempo adjustments, that number dropped to 65%. That gap was not random. Velocity affects everything. When a pitcher loses even 1 or 2 miles per hour, hitters recognize breaking pitches earlier. Contact quality improves, and entire pitch sequences stop working the way they used to. The effects showed up in recognizable names almost immediately. Shohei Ohtani lost 3.2 fWAR from 2022 to 2023. His strikeout rate dropped, his walk rate climbed. Martin Perez saw a 3.5 fWAR decline after struggling to adapt to a faster pace. Michael Kopech lost velocity command and eventually 2.0 fWAR during one of the worst stretches of his career. Tanner Huck, trying to operate as a full-time starter under the new timing rules, finished with a career-worst 5.01 ERA while repeatedly battling pitch clock violations. These were not replacement-level players having a bad year. These were pitchers whose deliberate tempo was structurally connected to their mechanics, their sequencing, and their results. The clock did not just add pressure. It removed a variable that their entire delivery depended on. Here is what the data was actually showing. Many slow-tempo pitchers were not slow because they lacked focus. Their mechanics were built around timing. The pause between pitches was part of the delivery itself. For years, their bodies had repeated the same sequence thousands of times. Reset, breathe, grip the ball, load the lower half, deliver. The pitch clock compressed that sequence. Pitchers suddenly had less time to recover, less time to reset mechanically, and less time to control the rhythm they had trained for most of their careers. You could actually see the adjustment happening in real time during games that season. Veteran pitchers stepped off the mound more often. They rushed through signs with catchers. Some were still getting set as the clock reached its final seconds. What looked from the outside like hesitation was often a pitcher trying to force years of muscle memory into a completely new rhythm. And at professional velocity, tiny disruptions matter. A release point shifts slightly, a fastball is life. Command tightens for the wrong reasons. The margin between effective mechanics and damaged mechanics becomes extremely small. Rebuilding that timing in a single offseason was never going to be simple. The relievers hit this wall faster and harder than the starters. Data showed that slow-paced starters had slightly more flexibility in compressing their interpitch time because they managed energy distribution across longer outings. Relievers, throwing at maximum effort on every single pitch, had no surplus to absorb the mechanical disruption. The pitchers who struggled most were the ones already operating closest to their physical limits, the ones where the margin between functional mechanics and breaking mechanics was measured in fractions of a second. What the broad coverage of the 2023 pitch clock story missed was this distinction. The clock was not a scheduling adjustment. For a specific group of veterans, it was a forced mechanical overhaul delivered with no off-season to prepare, no individualized minor league transition, and no structural support built into the rule. The league implemented the change uniformly across an entire roster of professionals at wildly different tempo baselines. The disruption it caused was not uniform at all. By 2024, most pitchers had adapted. The league tightened the runners-on clock to 18 seconds, and the transition period was effectively over. But the pitchers who lost a season during that adjustment never got those numbers back. For some veterans, the statistical damage from 2023 became permanent, and it tracked directly to how much each pitcher had been forced to change the rhythm their careers were built on. The pitch clock worked. Games got shorter. Attendance rose. The league got the result it wanted, but inside those gains was a specific cost paid by a specific group of pitchers. The data is detailed enough to show exactly who paid it and why. Broad rule changes create broad benefits. They also create concentrated losses that the headline numbers often hide. The next time a major rule change in professional sports and the headline numbers immediately look successful, it is always worth asking who absorbed the cost of that success. In baseball, that cost was measured in seconds. And for a specific group of veteran pitchers, those seconds permanently changed careers that had taken decades to build.